And we're live. This is Purple Shirt Thursday, the forum for excellence in solution delivery. Because at the end of the day, it is all about delivery. My name is Daryl O'Brien. Today is February 18th, 2021, and it is a snowy day here in Nashville, Tennessee, as are many places throughout the U.S. Hope that everyone is staying safe and warm, and glad that you're here. Let's get started. Today, we continue talking about people in solution delivery. But as always, quick refresher on who we are. We are Purple Shirt Thursday, a podcast and website dedicated to gathering and sharing information around big solution delivery, which means big, fun solutions to big, fun problems that have major impact across an organization, across the enterprise. You can find us at purpleshirtthursday.com, past episodes of the podcast and other information there. Our live feed home will be LinkedIn Live. We're still working with the good folks there to get that set up. More to come on that. In the meantime, these podcasts will be pre-recorded for your viewing pleasure. So thank you. Let's move on. Let's start talking about solution delivery. When we started this, we started talking about the basic elements of solution delivery. We spent a few minutes talking about vision. Now we're here to discuss the role that people play in solution delivery. This is a multi-part series because it is a big topic. As you know, people are the heart and mind of solution delivery. What I mean by that is you can have world-class best practices throughout your organization. You can have the best tools. You can have all of the things, right? But without people to leverage all of those resources, we really have nothing to talk about here. So people are at the heart of everything that we do in solution delivery and almost all of our work. People are what drives it. Last week, we spent some time talking about the most important person in solution delivery, that of course being you. Today, we're going to transition over and talk about stakeholders or stockholders. I use those terms interchangeably quite often because to me, it's sort of the same thing in terms of the work that we do. So let's take a few minutes and talk about who are our stakeholders for the change that we're trying to push forward. Who are the stakeholders? How do you identify them? Well, they fall into one or multiple of four criteria. First, it's a person or organization that has skin in the game. What I mean by that is the change that we're rolling out, the change that we're creating and rolling out introduces risk for this particular organization, risk of some kind. It could be what we're rolling out or how we're rolling it out, introduces risk. We have the drivers of change. These are our biggest cheerleaders at the table. They may even be funding the change and the work effort that goes into it. There are others who are primary beneficiaries of the change. Maybe not the drivers, but they do benefit in some way. And then those who are highly impacted. It could be an organization that, as a result of the change, they may have to shift resources or bring in or train new skill sets, or that it may impact their daily operations, their daily processes. So those folks definitely need a seat at the table. Once we've identified all of our stakeholders, that usually builds a team of about 3 to 5, sometimes 7 people. It all depends on the scope and magnitude of the effort that we're working with. So when you look at this, let's say you have 5 stakeholders. These people are coming in from different areas of the company or the organization, and they're bringing with them wildly different perspectives, completely different sets of priorities. They also bring in different talents, skill sets to the table of your stockholders. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, they bring in different levels of enthusiasm, we'll say. So you, as the primary agent of solution delivery or of introducing big change, are going to have to work with these stakeholders and build them into a cohesive unit, because you're going to work with them for a long time until the delivery is done. These changes that we're talking about are big, sometimes a year, maybe 2 year change that we're talking about. So you may have heard people talking about managing up and managing down. Of course, managing down, of course, is managing your teams, right? Managing up is managing your manager or supervisor or other people who are higher on the org chart than you. That will only get you so far in this game. What you really need to bring to the table is, instead of managing up, you need to lead up. Or, to put it more simply, you just need to be, you just need to lead. Remember, we said last week, what we do here is we're really leading people through change. And it's kind of funny how people view leadership in hierarchical terms, because leadership really has no direction. It just radiates, just radiates out. So that's leadership. And you need to lead this group of people towards the big solution delivery that you desire. So I want to step back in time a little bit and have a quick review of vision. Vision, as you may recall, is your view of the future, your view of the better world because of the change that you're pushing forward, and more important, and also importantly, why the world is better because of that change. So that's vision. So vision needs to be in a language that is understood by everyone, especially your stakeholders. It needs to incorporate the perspectives of relative and interested parties, meaning, you might recall that we talked about the ripple effect. When you make a big change, it's like dropping a big rock in a pond and you see the ripples that go out. These are people who are on the outer rings of the ripple who may not be directly or dramatically impacted by change, but they do have some interest in it. So, some varying degree of the butterfly effect, perhaps, of your change. The change needs to inspire people to act, is what you would like to have, and then easy to communicate. So, look at my notes here. Once you have your vision in place, what you really want to do is find ways to infuse this vision into the DNA of your organization. You want that vision to drive the culture forward. It's that important. So, there are a number of ways that we can do this. First, the best way is to start with a coalition that starts with you and your stakeholders. So, I like to refer to my stakeholders as my board of stakeholders in my initiative that I'm working on. And keep in mind, we talked about this a few minutes ago, but keep in mind that they're coming in from various perspectives, varied organizations, but they're also coming in at various levels of the org chart, right? They may also have no history of teamwork, meaning that they've never actually worked together on a project or a program or some piece of work. So, you, as the solution delivery leader, have to work with your board of stakeholders to develop a common understanding of what the problem is, what are the opportunities in front of us, and how do we leverage those opportunities? What is the solution that we want to deliver? So those are the things that you're going to start doing with your stakeholders. Over time, you want to cultivate a culture of conversation, trust, and leadership. So this is going to take some time. We'll talk about how we do that in a minute. Once we have our vision, you want to provide guidance and encouragement to your stakeholders to incorporate the vision into their daily communications, their daily activities. You want them to be the biggest cheerleaders. So this is your beginning coalition, you and your stakeholders, but you want to provide them with any opportunity to make that coalition grow to 7, 8 people, 12, 13, 14, 15 people, 25, 50, and have it begin to slowly snowball. Going back to what I said before about infusing the vision into the DNA of your organization. This is how it starts. You start with you and your stakeholders. Best place to start. So, once we have our vision, we have our stakeholders, usually with a big initiative, what usually happens is maybe some kind of offsite retreat, 2 or 3 day meetings, or maybe they're holed up into a conference room. Uh, and we review the effort, the big solution that we're proposing, the effort that needs to go into it, all the facets and factors that go into this. And if we do our jobs right, everyone comes out of that retreat, we'll call it, very excited and very energized. And uh, so we're excited about it. As we know from experience, that excitement and that energy quickly fades and dissipates because of all the other things we have to get back to in our daily work. So, you, as again, the solution delivery change agent, primary change agent, you need to find a way to reinforce that frequently with your stakeholders and to keep that coalition going and then start that snowball process. One of the best ways to do this is what I call a stakeholder board meeting. So, a stakeholder board meeting happens very frequently and consistently. So, what I mean by very frequently, depending on the scope and magnitude again of your initiative, as much as once a week, as little as once a month. It needs to be no less than once a month. But again, it's going to be based on how quickly the work is moving forward. So these happen very frequently. There's a consistent agenda. And one thing I will add is the rule of seven. What does this mean? Rule of seven. Having a meeting every week or every 2 weeks or every month may not be at the top of the list for certain people on your stakeholder board. You need to do everything you can to get them to come to this meeting at least 7 consecutive times. Something happens in this rule of seven that if you can get them all to show up 7 times in a row, somewhere in the middle, they catch the vision, they understand what we're trying to do here. They understand and they stay excited. So this meeting again happens frequently. And it's a very quick meeting, less than 30 minutes. You need to be in and out, respect people's time, but give them the information they need very quickly. You have the same agenda every time. You're going to go over what every stakeholder wants to know. What am I getting? When am I getting it? How much is it going to cost? And what stands in the way? Right? So, what am I getting? Well, it could be the vision. If you're doing a phased approach, you could be talking about the upcoming deliverable. Schedule a schedule. You can have an opportunity to show them some fancy, fun, Gantt charts or burn down charts, or maybe just a nice roadmap. And then, what is it going to cost us? Again, managing your financials, your resource management, or it could be procurement of goods and services. So, before we get into the next part, I do want to say in these, especially at the beginning of these stakeholder board meetings, pay attention to the people in the room. Listen to the questions they're asking, watch the expressions on their face. The slides that you present at the beginning may not be reaching the target. It may not be helpful to them. So, for example, if you throw up a Gantt chart when you're talking about the schedule and you see someone's eyes glaze over, you have two choices. You can either educate or come up with a different way to communicate schedule. So pay attention. You want this meeting to be very, very valuable to them. So the last part is what stands in the way. This is where you identify imminent risks, imminent obstacles, things that are on the horizon that maybe you're losing sleep over or whatever. This is your chance to give them a heads up. These are the things that could throw this work off. These are the things that could affect our delivery, both in terms of time, um, dollars, or quality, right? So this is, I can't state this enough. This part of the discussion is paramount because you want to keep them informed. We'll talk about why that's important in a minute, but you want to give them a heads up on everything that could potentially go wrong with this project, especially the things that are going to require their input. Because when everything hits the fan, one thing you do not want your stakeholders to be is surprised, right? You want to have this in front of them so they're thinking about it, they're aware of it. In the back of their minds, they're processing it. So when something does happen and you come to them, they're ready to deal with it and they can focus on solutions as opposed to, screaming or whatever. So in this group of stakeholders, now you have this microcosm. Because they're coming in from various levels and different organizations, now you have this group that's sort of outside or set aside from the normally define processes and protocols of your organization. So now you can set something different there. You have sort of a blank canvas. Excuse me. So this is your opportunity to set expectations, create and set expectations, boundaries, and protocols for your board of stakeholders. And especially in terms of how are we going to deal with the challenges that come up as we're rolling our change forward. You can set those rules ahead of time. You can set up boundaries around how discussions happen. You may have a big ego in the room, a strong personality, and you as the leader of of that group can set boundaries quietly and make sure that everybody has an equal seat at the table and and state their opinions and their thoughts. A safe place. And then going back to what we talked about before, creating this culture of conversation and leadership and trust. You do this by setting these expectations and boundaries. And then also you're over time, you're providing that guidance to help them infuse the organization with a vision. One thing I do want to point out is if you have this frequently enough, if you have strong personalities or whatever, this is your opportunity to provide constant, gentle pressure. If you have people who are slow to deliver, you need something from them. This is your opportunity in these meetings to provide that constant, gentle pressure of why it's important, what you need, and when you need it. So, constant, gentle pressure is a great tool. If you want to know more about that, it's in a book called Setting the Table by Danny Meyer, Meyer. It's an older book, about 12 years old, but it is relevant, very relevant. Or if you want to just Google, I would Google salt shaker theory that talks about constant gentle pressure and how to manage that. It's a great concept, and I use it often. And I use these stakeholder board meetings to do that with my stakeholders, especially difficult ones. Now, let's say you prepped your stakeholders about some imminent challenges on the horizon, and then something happens. So then you pull together your stakeholders into a stakeholder board decision meeting. If they're aware and you call them and say, hey, we've got to deal with this issue, if they've been prepped, if they've been forewarned, they're going to know a few things right away. Yes, this is an issue. They understand the weight and gravity of it. If you're managing your stakeholder board meetings well, meaning they're very quick, very efficient, they know that this decision meeting is not going to take long and it's worth their time. All right. So let's talk about you have a problem that has come up. It cannot be resolved within the within the solution delivery team. You need your board to come in and make a decision. You need to have them bring their resources to bear and decide what the fate of the project is going to be, right? So when you schedule this meeting, you as the solution delivery agent have to be prepared because you want this to be very quick, very efficient. So preparation is key. When you come into the meeting, start with the desired outcome by stating something like, okay, thank you for being here. At the end of this meeting, we have to have a decision about this, or we want a decision about X. And that's where you begin to talk about what is the issue, state the issue very succinctly, and the current impact or threat of that issue, right? And then once you've stated that issue and the threat or the impact, I would come back and state the desired outcome of the meeting again, just as a reminder. Now, depending on your stakeholders, they may want you to come into that meeting with prepared options, a cafeteria menu list of options with the pros and cons for each one, and perhaps a recommendation. Some stakeholders don't want you to have that at all. Even if they say they don't want that in those meetings, come prepared with options and a recommendation. Why? Because chances are they're going to ask you anyway. Two, it gets your mind into a very critical thinking mode about how we're going to resolve this particular issue. And then you can have very meaningful conversations, provide meaningful input with your stakeholders. Again, it's the preparation. You're there. What you're really there to do is to facilitate and moderate the discussion. This is their decision. This is the action that they need to take. Let them do it. And again, facilitate the discussion. Now, I use the word moderate there because sometimes when we're in the middle of these, Someone might want to, there's a temptation to say, why did this happen? Or who did this? In certain cases, there may be a person responsible. My recommendation is when that happens, just very quickly take the bull by the horns and say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. That's important. But right now, let's focus on creating the solution, focus on the solution. Then let's circle back around to that. Okay. And then when everything's done, you do circle back around. That does a couple things. One, it keeps everybody focused on the solution of the issue at hand. Two, if the issue is created by a human, 9 times out of 10, that human is going to come forward and be accountable. We'll have a podcast all about accountability. We'll probably have several, but that's a major issue. But usually people are accountable for their mistakes or their, whatever happened. So that's not an issue. But also, it gives you a chance to let the dust settle, find a solution, get that rolling forward. The dust settles a little bit, then you can come back to it with a clear mind and come up with an appropriate action if action is needed, right? So, in the middle of it, things can get very emotional, and that's not a good time to make those decisions. The other thing I would state is if you're going to come back around to something like that, please do it very privately. Do not make it a loud public action. Okay. Again, when you're leading this meeting, stay focused on solution. And then finally, once you have a solution or a decision, before anybody leaves the room, state it out loud very clearly, very distinctly, so that everybody knows that you're on the same page. And then immediately afterwards, put it in writing and distribute it to the stakeholders and other key people who need to know what that decision is and what the impact is. Okay. So that's it for now. That's all you're going to hear from me today. As always, thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening and watching. If you have any questions, of course, send them to me at Daryl@purpleshirtthursday.com. Suggestions, if you want to challenge something that we talked about here, love that. Or if you just want to nerd out and have a conversation, love that too. I can do that all day long. Or if you want to join us and participate in Purple Shirt Thursday somehow or help us out, love to have your help. I do want to point out that we have our playlist on Spotify. The music that you hear at the beginning and end of the podcast, we put those on our playlist out there on Spotify. And you can find a link to that on purpleshirtthursday.com. All right. So again, thank you for joining. I hope you have a wonderful Purple Shirt Thursday, and we will see you next week.
They're gonna break their banks for us.